Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really interesting angle on communication,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe more accurately, how we don't communicate.
Right. It's counterintuitive.
We've got some, well, pretty compelling material here that argues for the power of what it calls strategic silence, especially in a world that feels like it demands constant, engagement.
Yeah. Always on, always sharing.
Exactly. So our goal in this deep dive is to really get under the skin of these arguments. Why silence, and how could it maybe be a tool for you to use?
And the source material we're drawing from, it's quite direct, very assertive in its
No
claims.
kidding.
It basically suggests that in a lot of situations, saying less gives you an advantage. It really pushes back against the common wisdom that, total openness is always the best path.
Okay, so let's dive right in then. The source talks about the perils of overt communication. The basic idea being that talking too much or unnecessarily can make you vulnerable.
Hmm.
The first point is pretty stark. Speech is surrender. What's the logic behind putting it so strongly?
Well, the thinking is, um, when you reveal your plans, your strategies out loud,
You give the game away.
essentially, yeah,
Yeah.
you give other people the information they need to, well, counter you. And it's the same with sharing fears or insecurities. It can hand leverage to people who might want to manipulate you.
Okay.
The source uses this image like sacrificing a chess piece, maybe too early, without thinking, revealing too much too soon. It just puts you at a disadvantage down the line.
That's a really clear analogy, like spoiling the ending of a movie right at the start.
Exactly.
And the source also looks critically at this whole idea of transparency, calling it a potential trap. It suggests this modern obsession with authenticity might not always be helpful.
Yeah, that's a provocative take, isn't it?
Yeah.
The argument goes that the more you share, the more you put everything out
The
there.
less interesting you become.
Sort of. The more ordinary, perhaps predictable. You lose that element of, mystery.
Hmm.
And your predictability becomes a weakness. The Force even calls this drive for constant outward authenticity a modern cult.
A cult? Wow, that's strong language. It implies there's a downside to what most people see as a positive trait.
It definitely suggests caution, yeah.
Okay, and the third part here is about explanations. The source frames needing to constantly explain yourself as a sign of weakness. Could you unpack that?
Sure, the core idea is that, well, powerful people or entities often just act.
Hmm.
They don't feel the need to constantly justify every move to everyone.
Right.
The Source uses this striking comparison.
Right.
You don't see a lion explaining why it's hunting its prey.
No, you definitely don't.
So the rhetorical question is, why should you feel this constant obligation to explain yourself? Always justifying can perhaps undermine your perceived authority or conviction.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've looked at why the source thinks too much talking can be risky. Now, it shifts focus. It presents silence not just as, like, nothing,
Passive, yeah.
but as an active strategic tool. It outlines 3 specific types of this strategic silence. Let's start with the first one, the Panther's patience. Sounds very deliberate.
Yeah. It is. And what's interesting here is the focus on listening as the
Yeah.
key strategy.
Ah, okay.
The Panther's patience is about prioritizing taking information in, rather than immediately putting your own views out there. The source even throws out a 90% rule.
90%?
Yeah, spend 90% of your time listening, observing, absorbing, and only speak when you have something genuinely decisive or impactful to contribute, what the source calls the killing blow.
Killing blow. Wow, the imagery's intense.
It certainly grabs your attention.
And there's a practical drill tied to this. Consciously pausing, counting to 7 in your head before you respond in a conversation. What's the point of that specific pause?
Well, the drill is designed to help you fight that impulse we all have,
Yeah.
to jump in and fill any silence.
Sure, silence can feel awkward.
Right.
Yeah.
But by waiting deliberately, you give yourself a moment to actually think through a better response. And interestingly, it also creates space for the other person. They might reveal more if you don't jump in right away,
Using their discomfort, perhaps.
or just giving them room to continue their thought. Plus, observing how they react to your silence can be quite revealing too.
Okay, interesting. Let's move to the second type. The ghost protocol. That sounds very spy movie.
It does, doesn't it? This one is about minimizing your traces both digitally and emotionally.
Okay, how so?
The goal is to make your intentions, your motives, harder to read. You do that by consciously leaving less of a trail.
Like less data online.
Exactly. Less online data, fewer clues about your next move. The source uses images like, vanishing from security cameras, leaving no emotional receipts. It's about being intentionally unreadable.
No emotional receipts. I like that phrase. So being harder to predict emotionally, too.
Precisely. Obscuring your true feelings or reactions in certain situations.
And the drill for this one is a 48-hour online blackout. Just disappear for 2 days.
Yep. Go completely offline. The idea is to see what happens, who notices, who reaches out. It makes you more aware of your own digital footprint, your reliance on it, and how your absence impacts things.
A bit of a digital detox, but with a strategic purpose.
Kind of, yeah. Understanding your presence by observing your absence.
Okay. The final form is the king's curtain. Very regal imagery there. How does silence work in this context?
This one emphasizes the power of, distance and limited availability. It suggests that by not being constantly accessible, by holding back your opinions.
You create mystique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You cultivate respect, maybe even a bit of awe. The source compares it to royalty watching from afar. Silence acts like a velvet rope.
A velvet rope. Nice. It signals exclusivity, importance.
Right. Think about it. Haven't you noticed how some people seem to command more attention just by speaking less, by being less available?
Yeah, absolutely. Their words seem to carry more weight when they finally do speak.
This idea taps right into that phenomenon.
And the practical step here involves responding to requests for your opinion with just, I'll consider it, and then stepping back.
Just disengaging after that. It's powerful because it does a couple of things. One, it inserts a delay. You're not just reacting, you're implying careful thought.
Okay.
And two, crucially, you don't reveal your position. You avoid getting drawn into immediate debate or pushback.
Yeah.
You signal that your opinion isn't just given away lightly.
It preserves your options and your perceived status, maybe.
That seems to be the idea, yes.
Okay, so the source lays out the why, the perils, and then these three, House Panther, Ghost King. Now it gets into some specific training, what it calls modern Machiavellian training. Bit intense, it offers daily exercises. Day 1 is an information blackout. What's that about?
This first exercise is all about controlling the flow of information outwards.
So just don't talk about yourself.
Pretty much. Avoid personal disclosures.
Mhm.
And, interestingly, the advice is to respond to questions with questions.
Deflection.
You could see it that way. The goal seems to be redirecting the conversational focus, maybe gathering more information yourself, without giving away your own position or feelings. Information control, basically.
Right. Okay, day 3 is emotional bulletproofing. This involves a specific breathing technique, 8 seconds in, 12 seconds out, especially when provoked. How does breathing tie into strategic silence?
This one targets the physical side of things. That specific pattern, a longer exhale than inhale, is known to activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest system.
Exactly. It helps calm your body down, reduce that fight or flight response. So when you feel provoked or agitated, using this technique helps you stay calm physiologically.
And if you're calm, you're less likely to blurt something out.
Precisely. You're less likely to react impulsively, emotionally, and say something that undermines your strategy or that you regret later. It's about maintaining composure through physical control.
Okay, that makes sense physiologically. Finally, day 7 is power positioning. The actions here seem almost rude. Arrive late, leave early, speak minimally in groups. What's the strategy?
Yeah, they are counterintuitive to typical social norms, aren't they? But the strategy is about managing perception through presence, or lack thereof.
How so?
Arriving late and leaving early can subtly suggest your time is incredibly valuable, that you have other important demands.
Implying high status.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
And speaking minimally means that when you do speak, your words potentially carry more weight. People might listen more closely because you don't dilute your contribution with constant chatter. It's about impact over volume.
Making your presence felt more by being less present, in a way.
That's a good way to put it. Deliberate manipulation of presence and verbal output.
So to kind of wrap this up, the source presents a really compelling case for strategic silence. Maybe a bit intense for some, like we said, but compelling. It argues that in this world where everyone's seemingly shouting to be heard,
Right, this hyper-connected, always-on culture.
that being more deliberate, more silent sometimes, can actually give you a real advantage. It helps protect you, maybe influences how others see you.
Exactly. It fundamentally challenges that idea that more communication, more sharing is always the answer. It proposes that strategically, withholding information, opinions, even emotional reactions, that can be a surprisingly potent tool.
Yeah, and the source ends with this final challenge for you, the listener. Try it for a week.
The 7-day experiment.
Consciously hold back on the explanations, the justifications, the immediate emotional responses. Just observe what happens.
See how it feels, how others react.
And it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. Embracing this kind of silence might change how people perceive you. Maybe they become a bit more cautious around you rather than feeling familiar.
Evoking perhaps respect or even a little fear instead of just comfort.
Right. And it concludes with that stark phrase, silence wins. It really makes you think about your own habits, doesn't it?
It does. What actually happens when you resist filling every silence? What might shift subtly in your day-to-day interactions if you hold back just a little more often?
A question definitely worth pondering.